This week on Bad Brackets, the New York Jets select Welcome into another edition of Bad Brackets. I'm your host, Randy Isbell. The NFL draft is this week, and what a better way to celebrate than looking at some of the worst draft picks of all time. Yes, we are looking at the biggest NFL draft busts. Usually we try to stay positive, but if you're a New York Jets fan, this time of year is painful. With me this week is the first person to reach double figures in Bad Bracket appearances, Mr. Erik Watkins.
It was a long road to get here. A lot of internet issues, everything else, but sometimes you just gotta persevere, break through. You know what I'm saying?
The rags to riches story, Mr. Jesse Knight, record for least amount of points and then champion. Jesse, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm hoping to bust out and get another win.
There you go. And with us for the very first time, it's Zach. Zach, how's it going?
Just happy to be here. I heard about Jesse's woes the first time around, and I'm hoping I do not replicate that. So
yeah, please do not.
If you hear about my journey and my performance in the show, nothing to worry about whatsoever.
Yeah, somebody's been here 10 episodes and does not have the most wins in this show. Just say that. Let's look at your rules, especially because we got a first timer here this week. Each of these guys are going to give you 3 possible busts that will make the 24-person bracket. We're going to select the order here randomly in a moment. Points are given based on the seed that person is. If it's a 14 seed, you get 14 points. If it's not on the bracket, you get no points. And it is still out there. 3 bonus points if you select the person on the 1 seed that is yet to be picked on this show. 24 possible numbers, 23 of them have been picked throughout the 14 episodes of Bad Brackets. 1 is left. It could net you 3 bonus points if you somehow find it. Before the show, each of these 3 gave me their final 4 and their champion. If they get the final 4 correct, they get 2 points for each one. If they get the champion correct, they get 5 extra bonus points. And as I always say, bonus points become a big thing later on in the episode. We've seen many victories won and lost with those bonus points. Any questions before we figure out who goes first? Perfect. Let's go ahead and spin the wheel, see who gets to pick the very first bust this week. And Erik, the 10-time joiner of the show, gets the very first spot. And the old second pick. If it will stop lagging, there it goes. Zach will get the second pick. Jesse, do you want to we'll just let Jesse win. I think we did this last time when he won at the WrestleMania episode.
It's my good luck spin.
By the way, for those keeping track at home or those that are curious, the third pick has won the most episodes so far. So there you go. Things you don't need to know and or care about. All right, Jesse. Erik, you get the very first pick. That's who I meant. Who are you going with?
Well, going a little bit homer with this one. A lot of hype coming out of Oklahoma State, but as Stephen Smith puts it, he couldn't stay off the weed. Former Jacksonville Jaguar, who did not win a Super Bowl for another team, Justin Blackmon.
Justin Blackmon. Good pick. Zach, give me your first one.
I think that's a really awesome first pick. He was one of the only 2 receivers that I even thought was possible for this. I am going to go with a running back, which I also don't usually put in these, but I also don't normally end up in the top 10 anymore. So it's going to be Trent Richardson just because he got so fat.
All right, Jesse, give me yours.
Oh, well, Trent Richard. No, that was going to be my first pick. So we'll jump down and go with one for Randy, and we'll go with Vernon Golston.
Oh, bring
That was
it
my second
home.
pick.
I know that guy well. All right, Jesse, get one more pick.
All right. This one probably a shot in the dark, but I'm going to go with Ron Dane, running back from
The
Wisconsin.
Giants, right? Giants drafted Ron Dane.
Yeah.
Zach, give me your second pick.
I'm breaking all the rules here because that Vernon Golston was where I had my eyes, but I really
Gonna
tried
break
to
all the
stay
rules
with.
and pick somebody from the NBA. That's what he's gonna do, right?
Yeah,
All right.
no, my rules going in were you had to meet certain criteria, which was either someone moved up to get you too much, like they paid too much, like a Trey Lance if he was eligible type of person, or you were top 5, number 1 at the position that you were drafted on. But there's one person who it's literally just fan hype, and he went to a team that seemed to like him a lot more than everyone else did, and that's Johnny Manziel. I think he could be like the last person who squeezes onto this list. I think he was like 22nd in that draft. It's still a first rounder, but he was gone in 3 years, right? So that kind of fits my criteria just in longevity. So,
Eric, what do you got?
Another man who, for a team that was trying to come out of the dregs, somewhat of a hometown pick, unfortunately, similar to Justin Blackmon, but had a very, very tragic end, Charles Rogers.
Charles Rogers, Detroit Lion, I want to say.
mm-hmm.
All right, Eric, one more.
Now, I'm going to go in the Wayback Machine for this one. My favorite collegiate team, we had a chant when we went and faced him, as so many others did, beat him. Cold figure among the country, but he was only known for one professional highlight. Getting run over by a man who dealt with injuries himself, but will forever live on in the Tecmo Bowl. The man who ran him over was Bo Jackson. The one who got run over, and it makes my final pick for this list, Brian Bosworth.
He got ran over by. Okay, all right. I didn't know that story. That's great.
Yeah, they showed the clip. It was a Seahawks Raiders game. It may have been on Monday Night Football. I've seen it a bunch of times. Seeing him falling down, it was just sad, but in a way hilarious.
That's fair. All right, Jesse, give me your last pick.
Zach.
Or Zach, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I even have Zach clicked over here. So Zach, give me your last pick.
Okay, this is someone I was talking about actually before the show starts, and I wasn't going to say his name because I honestly had forgotten it. It's he was drafted by Washington, and then they had such little confidence, or I should say, they had such a dire need for quarterback that they took another quarterback in the exact same draft. But they took Heath Schuler out of Tennessee, number 3 overall, and did not even make it 2 seasons. He was the Mitchell Trubisky of his time, I guess you could say.
I'll go back to defense and go with the number 1 overall pick in 2000, Courtney Brown.
I love that pick.
There you go. Really good picks. However, are they going to net these guys some points? Let's find out. All right, Zach, I'm just going to let you know right now that my name is Rancid Randy on the show for reasons, because the numbers get all weird. But I like to come up with themes as far as different matchups go. Your first theme, as will be most of the themes in some of these rounds, are very team-based. So your 14th seed How about Brian Bosworth, Eric? 14 points. Or how about Rick Meyer? All the way back in 1993. Which Seahawk was the worst pick? All right. You guys got your answers?
Yep.
All right. Show me a winner.
Going with the Boz.
The Boz all the way. Anybody remember Rick Meyer at all?
Didn't he come out of Notre Dame?
He did.
Yeah, it was one of those names to where while you had some heralded quarterback classes, he was just like, oh, it's Rick Meyer, Notre Dame. But if you look at everything else, it's like you kind of expected him to be a bust. But with the Boz, it's like going on and the commercials and all this and that, the haircut, the tenacity, everything. You thought he would be perfect. And, well, no.
Everybody knows the story of another certain bust that we all know is going to make this bracket. But before that quarterback battle of who was going to go 1 or 2, this was a good battle between Rick Meyer and another Washington State quarterback, and Drew Bledsoe. Bledsoe turned out to be pretty good. Rick Meyer, not so much. Jesse, why'd you go Boz?
Just quick glance at Rick Meyer. He did float around the league for 12 seasons, played with a bunch of different teams. Boz did not. He was 3 seasons, and the contract too that the Seahawks gave him, 10 years. Just an albatross. Bad all around.
Dak, your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the reason I picked the Boz was kind of the same reason. It's longevity. The Boz only made it 2 seasons. If a quarterback makes it more than 6 years in the league, whether it's a starter or a backup, I'd take him off the list. A really good example of this, of someone who I'm not even including today, would be like David Carr, right? Like number 1 overall pick. Didn't even consider him for my Final Four because, I mean, had multiple stops afterwards, right? Like he kept going. He just happened to get drafted by an absolutely terrible team.
Absolutely. You bring up David Carr. What a fantastic segue, Zach. That's not true. The year 11 seed. How about Steve Epman? First
Got him on the
round
list.
pick for the Indianapolis Colts. Or Jason Smith, second pick in the 2009 draft. Which big man was the bigger bust? Let's see who moves on. Smith moves on. That's a clean sweep, yeah?
Yep.
Move this off of being so small so I can actually read your guys' answers. No, and then I hit the wrong. There we go. Why'd you guys go Smith?
Personally, especially back in those days with the Colts, they were more known for messing up in drafts a lot more often. So especially within those top 5 picks. So you kind of knew if they were picking you, your career was pretty much going to die.
It's totally fair. Zach, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, this was a coin flip. I mean, it's like neither made it more than 3 seasons, but it was more of a recency bias. I'm familiar with Jason Smith being a bust. I also know that I don't think did he even play a game after his first season at all? So at least the other guy, they gave a couple of years to kind of like, if a team knows that you are that bad in your very first year, I think you're a massive bust. Like you hear these like stories from people in training camp where they say the first time they see a guy play, they know he's not an NFL player, and those are the most disheartening when it's a top first round pick. So,
Jesse, what about you?
Even though my picks in the snake draft earlier were heavily weighted towards defense, I feel like defense at the top of the draft is a little bit more of a gamble, where offense you're expected, like especially a tackle drafted that high, to miss on a tackle that high is a bigger bust to me than and
For those that are curious too, a lot of us live up here in the Pacific Northwest, minus Erik, of course. Steve Ettman from Spokane played at Cheney, was a coach for the Spokane Shock at one point. Doesn't help him.
Yeah, we can't disrespect him like that. We can't move him on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
sure.
only if it was the Spokane Shock from the AF2 days. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to your number 3 seed, who goes up against Brian Bosworth. It's none other than Art Schlichter. We go old school here, from all the way back in 1982 when the Colts were with Baltimore. Schlichter or Bosworth?
Schleister's actually how that's
He's too much of a bust. I don't care.
fair. Another interesting story.
Rude, but fair. By the way, thank you to my daughter for once again giving the art to my background today. I always tease her about not using up the whole whiteboard, and she definitely did. But you can also see how high she can reach. Right there. She can't quite make it. By the way, if you're curious, I got this on my other show. I made sure I got the title of her art piece. Anybody want to take a guess? I'll give you a bonus point if you can name this art piece. According to my 7-year-old daughter.
I'm getting bunny vibes. So,
Erik, anything? You're never it has quite the name.
Probably not, but is it something related to a dog?
No. Jesse, anything?
I got nothing. I'm seeing like a marshmallow hug with with maybe a flame behind, so it's like a roasting marshmallow hug.
Again, according to my 7-year-old artist daughter, this picture is called Cat Apple Swirly Butt with a Bag.
That was my next guess.
I can see it now. Yeah.
You can buy it now for $10 million, please.
You have quite the abstract artist on your hands. I will say.
I agree. All right. Who advances?
Art.
2 with Art, 1 for Boz. Jesse, why'd you go Boz?
I still feel like he was the bigger bust, less of a career. He was supposed to change the game in terms of what he was bringing in, the ferocity and the intensity. And Art, I mean, he still played 4 seasons, I guess, and then he got some AFL time, so that's fun. And I guess to me, it wasn't so much. I mean, yeah, he was not very good, or else he would have stuck in the NFL. But
That's true.
More the gambling than the skill.
Erik, what about you?
And that's the interesting story about that. This is a time the Colts were still in Baltimore. You had everything with the draft of Elway right around in that similar time. And with him, had a lot of promise, but as you mentioned, the gambling, all sorts of issues, was one of the best of the original quarterbacks of the Arena Football League, late 80s and early 90s. So, like someone else who I may or may not picked behind the scenes, a lot of potential, could have done something, could have helped save a team in a city, but in the end, just a chain of events that led to misery for everyone.
Jack, any thoughts?
Yeah, this goes to the point I made earlier about a quarterback losing a job to another quarterback drafted in the same year. It's like, I get that this guy in this particular situation had other stuff going on, but I don't know. If you lose your job to, like, not even a veteran, you know what I mean? It's not like he was brought in as a rookie and just couldn't win the job. He lost the job to someone who was drafted later in the same draft. So to me, that's the antithesis of a bust.
Also picked 4th overall through 3 touchdowns in his NFL career?
3.
3.
Yeah.
11 interceptions. So, I mean, that's something at least, right? Move on to your 6th seed. I love that picture of Tony Mandarich. The what was his name? The something bust. I mean, like Sports Illustrated thought he was going to be the next big thing, gave him the cover, and then the next year they gave him an infamous cover because they went, oh, never mind. We were incorrect about this guy.
I had to look him up because on every list that I found in my research, I was like, he's so high. Like he was somewhere between like 5 and 10 on every list. And I was like, okay, I need to know more.
Yeah. He was
But I mean,
so
it makes sense.
hyped.
He was drafted the year that I was born. So it's not like I would have even gotten stories of this, I'm sure.
An absolute complete bust. His career ended. I tell this story several times anytime we're on bad brackets around sports stuff that I grew up in a time where Sports Illustrated would send a VHS tape for that year in review. And in 1992, that was the last year of Tony Mandarich, and they brought it up and the sad career that he had. So he's another one of those players that always gets stuck in my mind because as an 8-year-old in 1992, I watched that VHS tape a lot. But does he move on?
I will have an interesting point with mine because it's now added a new category to things I should have considered when making these picks.
All right. Let's see what you got. Mandarich moves on. Jesse, you got outvoted again. Why'd you go with Smith?
Again, longevity for me. I mean, yeah, Mandarich was possibly more highly touted. I mean, they were both picked second, so it's not like there was, a big difference there. But he stuck around for 7 years, made a bunch more starts than Smith. So, he wasn't good, but he was obviously serviceable enough to actually start the games.
That's fair. We'll let you guys talk about Tony here in a second, but let's go ahead and get right to our championship match in quadrant number 1. How do you say it? Art
Schleister
or Tony Mandarich? Which one moves on?
What's nice about using paper is I have both of these names already written down. I just had to turn to the right page.
That's what happened for me the first time when Randy also failed too.
I gave you 10 minutes warning, and it was not enough. I apologize. All right, Zach, just so you know, when we get to the finals of this or when we get to the final 4, I like to play a game myself, try to pick who picked what, and see if we get a split or not. I'm going to start with Jesse. Jesse, let me see your pick. He went with Art. I believe that Zach went the opposite way. Zach, let me see yours.
Tony.
I got it right. Erik, break the tie.
Tie broken.
I could have went either way to get it. Jesse just thought Mandarich was good, I guess. But Zach, we haven't talked about Mandarich very much. Why did you go him all the way into the final?
The things I've talked about so far: longevity, how high you were drafted, just if you're like someone like Manziel, it's like the overall hype or buzz that was around you. But in this case, it's what you could have had instead of the person that you took, right? So this is something I did not know until today. That is the same draft as Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, Derek Thomas. So all these people are people that they decided to take Tony Mandarich instead. So it's just rough. This is stuff you hear about, more often in the NBA where it's like, they wanted to take a 7-footer, so they took a 7-footer, and then the next 3 people are like Hall of Fame shooting guards. You know what I mean? So it's I feel like this is exactly that category of a team probably addressing a need, and instead, like a super talented player slips right by them. So,
Eric, why'd you go, Tony?
I mean, it's just that. Yes, you're addressing a need. Yes, a fundamental need, because especially back then, based on much more of a running game, fundamentals, blocking, you understand that. But to draft a guy in that position that high, you can't just get 7 years of serviceable. That's got to be your guy in the trenches for a decade. And as Zach just said, look at who you could have had right there, ready and waiting, changing the course of NFL history twofold in your favor had you just made one of those other choices.
Very, very fair. All right, look at your points through the first quadrant. Eric, the only one that's gotten one on the board so far, has a dominating 14-point lead. But let's go right in to the second quadrant and give us a new leader. Sorry, Eric, your lead did not last very long. Because your 15 seed is Heath Schuler.
Thought about it. I thought about it.
He goes up against Bruce Pickens of the Atlanta Falcons. Which one of these two guys moves on? I like that. All the points so far have been from you guys' last picks.
We had to calculate your level of rancidness and what you were going to do this week.
You never know.
I'm slowly figuring it out. Now that I'm 10 episodes in, I've cracked a little bit of the code. I got the first digit in the combination.
I'll tell you right now, I always try to get it ahead of the game as far as the seedings go. So when you guys start sending me your final fours, I already have my stuff locked in. There's an episode in a few weeks' time that I have now locked in, and it is all ready to go. And my way of seeding them, you will never believe. And I'm very excited to reveal my secret for that one. It's
If
a
this
lot of
is
fun.
another situation like what happened with the golf courses or with what
Slight.
happened with the
It's
ice
slight.
cream and the plastic helmets.
I have my ways. I have my ways to make it fun. This one's going to be really fun. But for now, who moves on? Schuler gets a vote. Schuler gets 2 votes. Jesse, what is happening? Are you just here to be the
Contrarian.
anti-popular guy? What is happening here?
Just living that contrarian life over here.
Go watch AEW. No, this is the wrong show for that. Anyways,
No, I'll watch Impact.
little New
further
Japan.
that might be
Further off the
better
beaten
at
path.
this point. That
Sorry.
might
He
be
doesn't even
Um,
watch. He doesn't even watch New Japan. He watches what's the Stardom. He's a Stardom guy.
Or All Japan.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, why'd you go, Bruce?
Bruce, 4 seasons, 4 teams. That's not such a great recipe. He was supposed to be the top defensive back in that class, and the guy drafted just a couple spots after him made Pro Bowl, and he made 3 other stops on his NFL career.
It's totally fair. We heard Zach talk about Heath Schuler when he picked him in the draft. Eric, why'd you go Heath?
Again, another guy that Washington, especially Joe Gibbs, venerable team, trying to look for that big piece. Schuler, highly talented, coming out of the SEC, which wasn't as dominant in football back then, but they looked to number 21 in Rocky Top and, well, played like 21 in Tennessee, played like 5 in Washington. Everything just fit naturally.
All right, move on to your next matchup. We have another themed head-to-head matchup here. And Eric, I know you lost your lead, and I could tell from your face you were upset. So let's go ahead and fix it here.
Thank you. See?
As the 10 seed is Charles Rogers, first-round pick for the Detroit Lions. And your 23 seed, Andre Ware, first-round pick for the Detroit Lions. Which was the worst pick for the Lions? Everybody got their answers? Jack looks like he's still thinking, maybe. Oh,
No.
he's got it. All right, let's go. Rogers. We will talk about him shortly. No surprise there. Shout out, though, to Andre Ware. He struggled as a quarterback. 5 touchdown passes in his career, 8 interceptions. Just never got going as a Detroit Lion.
He
and
played for
bounced
the
around a
Lion.
bit.
All quarterbacks play bad for the Lions.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that look at the run and shoot system that he played in Houston. Back at that time, it was never going to translate to the NFL.
Right. Especially back then. All right, let's move on. The 2 seed, he's on everybody's tip of their tongue. It's an easy one. Jamarcus Russell. Heath Schuler, Jamarcus Russell. Who moves on?
Cannot believe he's the 2 seed.
He should have been 24, I know.
I mean, the 1 seed's obvious, but
The 2 the 2 and the 1 are flipped in this case.
all right. Is there a chance for an upset?
No.
I didn't think so. Did not think so at all. We'll get to Russell. That was an easy one. Sometimes I give you some easy picks. But is this an easy pick? Charles Rogers or your 7 seed? How about Lawrence Phillips? Another one of those stories that did not end fantastically. Lawrence Phillips or Charles Rogers? Jesse, you ever going to get on the board? You ever going to get on the board?
No,
You are in threat of breaking your own record right now.
I know.
Hey, if
I
you're
got it.
listening,
Either win or set a record. There's no in between.
All right. God, I noticed this when I was editing another video. I come out of a break saying "all right" every time. I hate it. Anyway, let's see who moves on. Rogers gets 2. Rogers with a clean sweep. We haven't talked about him yet. Eric, why'd you go Rogers?
again, star receiver out of Michigan State, heralded, coming to Detroit. The storyline was there. Hometown guy, save the team, bring your talent, up and coming, all this and that, and then just between not being good, between drugs, all of this. Really, the sad part is met an unfortunate early end due to cancer, and that put a little bit of, in this sense, takes away some of the luster of the busness, but
Zach, why did you go with Charles?
Yeah, these are actually 2 people I stayed away from in my initial picks because of the exactly what Eric just mentioned. But I believe Phillips actually had one really, really good season, if I'm not mistaken. I believe his second year actually put up some decent numbers where Rodgers did not, and not to mention they drafted Rodgers over Andre Johnson, who ended up becoming a Hall of Famer. So
Yeah, in 97 for St. Louis, he had 8 touchdowns rushing, 600 yards. Got into some issues, ended up in NFL Europe, and then, of course, got into some legal stuff, ended up in jail, and then died in jail, which is never the ending to one of these stories you want to get to. But, Jesse, why did you go Charles?
Yeah, I mean, just never got it together. A lot of injuries, which was really tough too. I mean, played 5 games first season, got injured, came back, pulled a Rodgers in third play of the next season, and got injured, and
Hey!
It makes sense because his last name is Rodgers too. But
yeah,
Hey, Just be glad that now you can see where he got injured every week of the season.
Yeah. So tough with injuries, which happens with players, obviously, but then the drugs and all that. And I mean, the fact that Detroit released him and everybody else was like, yeah, you're right. You're right. He does deserve to go away. That's
But the question is, does Charles Rogers have any chance to beat Jamarcus Russell? I'm not even going to play around. I believe it's a clean sweep. So let's see him. I do. And that's why I never care about off-season workouts. Ever. Just the things they fall in love with.
I don't even believe. Yeah, and I don't even believe that was the pro day story, right? That was the LSU story. That was like Nick Saban said he saw him do that right when he got onto campus, and then it became like legend because Saban swore by it. But no, we're talking about Rodgers saying people think he should go away. Russell is the ultimate people think he should go away. You can't name another like number one overall quarterback who didn't get at least one other shot. Like for this guy to like try out, because remember he tried out for plenty of teams after he lost it, and nobody wanted him, not even as a backup. Like it was that bad of a situation, and you just don't see that from first round quarterbacks, right? Like there's people like Mitchell Trubisky who are still in the league. Josh Rosen even made it to a couple of teams before the league gave up on him. Like it's unheard of, the entire story, really.
And I'm going to reference this because it popped into my head as a fond memory. From one bracket hours to another. Back in the day, Scott Van Pelt did a whole 64 item bracket for the most annoying sayings in sports. What was one of the highest seeds? Raiders starting quarterback Jamarcus Russell. If that tells you anything about how far down the drain you've gone that quickly, nothing will.
I think he also woke up the NFL to the craziness of the rookie salary structure. So when you can change the whole like bargaining and all that just because of how bad you were, that's
100%. You nailed it right there. Jamarcus Russell moves on to the Final Four with Tony Mandarich. We have halfway done. Eric right now with a 9-point lead over Zach. Jesse still looking for that record, apparently. Let's move on to quadrant 3. And these are flipped, but that's fine because they're both from the same team and they make me sad. There's points for Jesse. This is actually your 17 seed, Blair Thomas. There's your spoiler for the 16 seed. The pictures got flipped and it made me mad, but I don't care. Vernon Golston is your 16 seed. Blair Thomas is your 17 seed. Somehow the pictures flipped themselves as I was putting things together, and I just didn't care about fixing it. So that's fine. Blair Thomas or Vernon Golston, which Jet was the worst draft pick?
Just which out of those two, not which over all of the drafts ever, because that's
these are the worst. These are the worst two out of all of them. There are a lot. That was annoying. So the Blair Thomas one did not link with this group, and then Vernon Golston did. And then when I threw Blair Thomas's thing in there, I was like, "Oh, I'm now Vernon."
What's crazy about this draft? I thought about this a couple hours ago. You could make 24 picks easily just off of Bengals, Browns, and Jets. Like you don't even need to look at.
You throw a line.
Yeah, in there. It's true. Yeah, I guess that's true. You'd be set.
Put that in your memory bank. But for now, which Jet was the worst pick? Blair Thomas or Vernon Golston? Who do you got?
And the Jets just won a Super Bowl.
Jets.
It's Golston. I get it. Blair Thomas, by the way, as a kid, I didn't realize was such a bust because he was the running back for the Jets for Tecmo Super Bowl. He ran fantastic in the game. Thoughts on Vernon Golston?
Yep. I can take this
Is that
one.
what you thought?
Yep. So I actually try to stay away from defensive ends. I think that was mentioned maybe by Jesse earlier that they're more of a risk than a tackle, right? Or was that Erik who made that point? Someone made that point. They are more of a risk than taking like an offensive tackle, but you see a lot of them in the top 10s of drafts. But Vernon Golston's on another level because I don't think that the guy never had a sack, correct? In his career.
So I don't think
he had zero
so.
sacks in his career. I think that's
tackles, zero sacks.
Yeah, so to me that's the exact defensive line you want on this list.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I was high on Vernon Golston.
The man has one job. One! Could not even come close to getting that done. When your offensive equivalent is on the level of Ryan Lindley, you are a bust.
See, and you know, Zach brought up the point. There's several teams that are notorious for bad draft picks. Yet the fans of those teams, every time they get the first pick, they get all excited about said player, and they completely forget about what had happened. Sometimes it works out, like the Jets, where they went out, got Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner, and that was a fantastic first. Or Jeremiah Johnson in the first round as well. Like that was a great draft. And then all the other ones get so excited about this guy, and then
Zach Wilson's still on the trading block, right?
yeah, but he was that's actually one thing I forgot to mention here. I mentioned to these guys before. No active players are going to be on this list because we've said some people have redemption stories, and that we will allow them to have the chance to do so. Whether it's
I was going to make the point that you don't think 38-year-old Jamarcus Russell could come out of retirement.
No,
38.
Not active.
I mean, maybe if it's desperate or one of these other arena leagues that are around, but
he could go do something if he wanted to. He could throw a ball.
We talked about these teams that were very well known for having bad draft picks. One, of course, was my New York Jets. Another one Zach brought up was this team. The number 9 seed, Kajana Carter, first overall pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. 24 seed, David Klinger, also of the Cincinnati Bengals, who moves up.
What's really bad about a lot of the Bengals picks too is they're like 1 overall picks. Kajana Carter was a number 1 overall pick at running back.
Doesn't happen anymore. Probably because of this pick. All right. Which Bengal was worse? Ooh. Carter moves on. Erik, why'd you go with the 24 seed Klinger?
again, another Houston quarterback, another team in Cincinnati, did not learn their lesson. It's like, okay, you were asking for trouble. You maybe thought it was different, but the intention behind knowing that, yes, you may have had some hope in Kajana Carter, hope that was unjustified, but going into this, you knew, especially with the caliber of quarterbacks that you were just coming off of at that time, no, shame on you.
Jesse, why did you go with Carter?
Yeah, first overall running backs. I mean, we've obviously turned into a different league than it was in 1995, but even at that point, that's a lot of stock to put in a running back. He was 4 seasons with the Bengals, a couple more with a couple other teams. just never was the impact that he should have been as a number one.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. I know Zach was mad at me for who was the number 2 seed, but because Jamarcus Russell was number 2, say it with me. Your number 1 seed.
Ryan Leaf.
There it is. Ryan Leaf. Nobody was wanting to say it with me. It was sad. Ryan Leaf.
I just didn't believe it was true, so I couldn't say it because.
Yeah, actually, that's very fair. There's times where I pull a complete fast one.
I wrote it down before he even showed it. So I mean,
that's fair.
Spoiler.
Get the Jets off the board.
Done.
Yeah, we don't even have to show it.
Yeah, Jets can't even win the worst draft pick category. Just sadness. We'll talk about Ryan Leaf here in a minute. Ryan Leaf, moving on, we go to the 8 seed. And I know some people are out there going, wait a minute. We talked about the Cincinnati Bengals, and we didn't include this guy. Yes, Akili Smith is on the bracket. Another top pick for your Cincinnati Bengals. Which number 1 overall pick, though, moves on to face Ryan Leaf? Akili Smith or Kajana Carter? Who moves on?
It's hard.
Mm-hmm. Smith, Carter. Smith moves on. Very close. Eric, why'd you go Carter?
The reason why, as soon as I saw that number 11 jersey, I just thought so many memories in my formative years of the just carousel of quarterbacks running through. Oh, it's a kid. Oh, it's Spurgeon Wynn. It's this guy. Oh, it's that guy. And it's like they were just naturally adrift. So you could forgive them of thinking, well, they're not going to get this right regardless. But with Carter, that was the one you definitely thought that was your big pick, your home run waiting, and nothing.
All right, we'll talk about Smith in a moment, but is there a chance that Akili Smith was a worse draft pick than Ryan Leaf, who's the 3rd player to make our Final 4? Everybody got their answers? Oh, can I pick? Does anybody go Smith? If anybody would, it would be Zach.
That's Leaf.
Nah, Jesse. There you go. Eric, clean sweep it.
Clean sweep
it. Before we move Ryan Leaf on, somebody talk about Akili Smith.
Career sub 50%. I say career lightly. Sub 50% passer, 5 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. When you're drafted 1st overall and brought in to be the guy, and last 3 seasons. And then, I mean, he did have a couple more on practice squads, but so slightly better chance than Jamarcus Russell. He was at least brought in for off-season or practice squad, but yeah,
it took longer for the league to give up on him, and he had a slightly less terrible touchdown interception ratio than you did, is just like the worst I've ever seen. So,
Eric, we all were at that age where we remember the ridiculous battle of who was the better quarterback. Who should go number 1, Ryan Leaf or Peyton Manning? Man, I think the Colts dodged a bullet there, right?
The one knock, even with Peyton Manning, like just field general, family legacy. The only thing was he never beat Florida. Bill Poley and the Colts were like, if that's the worst thing we can say about him, you damn straight we're taking him. Ryan Leaf out I'm going to not disrespect Washington State and call them the dregs of the Pac-10 back in those days, but it just, when you're getting into arguments with reporters in the locker room and your teammates have to hold you back, you know you've got problems.
For one, I give credit to Ryan Lee for really turning his life around. I give him credit for that. I always like to see him when he's a guest host on the Rich Eisen show, and he's been doing a bunch of stuff. So
Good Morning Football.
shout
He's
out to
awesome on
him.
it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We talk about all the ends of some of these lives and just how nobody was able to bounce back. Ryan Leaf has done a fantastic job to bounce back. And two, Washington State might have been the dredge of the old Pac-10, but they are the beasts of the Pac-2, sir.
That's true. This is true. Can't wait to see them compete and live up with the honor and comparing with the Mountain West. So
Yeah, they're either first or second in the Pac-2 for sure. Top
100%.
top two.
One quadrant remains. We've got a pretty good race so far. Erik with the lead, 24 points. Jesse with 16. Zach with 15. Anybody worried that they're going to miss somebody that's on this board?
I'm worried Johnny's not on there because if he wasn't like just sliding in at 24, then I assumed he wasn't on the list. So,
I mean, with the matchups, with the themes, I'm a little bit worried because I'm thinking back. Who else did we royally mess up bad enough besides Justin Blackman? We've been
rub it in. You have good drafts as a Jaguar fan. Just rub it in.
I'm pretty confident in one of mine.
I'll say that. Yeah.
Draft. I'm just saying we have decent ones to where we don't mess up horrifically. There's a difference.
Your final quadrant, yes. Themes are.
This has got to be the Browns quadrant.
13 seed from the Cleveland Browns, Justin Gilbert.
There's Justin Gilbert. Yeah, I knew it. Figured he was a high one.
And your 20 seed and points for somebody. I forget. I think this is Jesse.
Courtney Brown.
Brown, first overall.
I was confident he would be on there.
In 2000. Which Cleveland Brown was the worst pick? All right, give me Browner. Gilbert all the way. Why Justin Gilbert there, Zach?
I think it's the worst cornerback bust of all time. So to me, when I was making my list, which was really just an accumulation of like an aggregation really of 4 or 5 other lists that I found online, it was like, this guy is the worst cornerback that I have read over so far. So to me, this is an easy pick. And also we got to get a corner moving up this board because I think he's the only hope.
Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, lasted 3 seasons with 2 teams, which is impressive to be drafted that high and not even make it to a 3rd season with your original team, and then not anymore with the team after that. He has made a little bit of a comeback in the Arena League. So he's playing there currently. But yeah, in the NFL, never belonged.
Totally agree. All right, let's move on. More theming. Your 12th seed and points, I think. Trent Richardson. Zach.
Right, this is right about where I thought he was going to fall, but that was a safe pick for me in this game.
Anybody want to guess the 21 seed?
It'd be really cool if it was Johnny Manziel.
Almost.
Wrong quarterback.
I bet I can guess the 4 seed though.
Points are getting interesting.
It was fun while it lasted.
All right, which Brownie moves on? Trent. Now it's Erik who's getting picked on. Why'd you go with Brady Quinn?
Again, another quarterback out of Notre Dame, going to the hometown team, Subway commercials, all this and that. Lest we forget that kind of Fiesta Bowl performance against Ohio State before he got drafted. Cleveland was like, oh, no, we need a quarterback, as they've said a few dozen times since 1999. And Browns were just going to brown, and they browned again all over with that one. But great to see him and his post-NFL endeavors as well. But just, I knew from the get-go, it's like, I don't trust this organization. He's going to be ruined. At least he tried to have some redemption in Denver.
Zach, at least Trent Richardson had one good season with Cleveland, but so did Peyton Hillis. So,
yeah, I also think that Brady Quinn gets saved by the fact that it's the Jamarcus Russell draft, right? Like he wasn't the big bust in this draft, so we kind of like it was a bad quarterback draft. And then I also think that when it's so shallow at the quarterback position, they're going to try to squeeze a second and third quarterback into the first round. Lately, it's been worse, right? Like this year, it's probably going to be 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the first round, and the likelihood of more than one of them working out is pretty slim.
yeah, that's fair. Jesse, any thoughts?
He was bad. He was not good. I mean, I said it with the Gilbert one, but they actually gave up on Trent faster.
Yeah.
But they were able to fleece Indy out of a little bit in the trade. I don't even remember what they got back, like a third or a fourth. I mean, anything is worth it at that point to get him off the roster. But
Wow, I actually looked. Richardson was traded to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2014 first round pick.
First round. So,
well, what's crazy about him is I think teams thought they just had to get him in shape. Like this isn't like Brady Quinn where it's like, oh, maybe he's not actually a pro quarterback. This is like, oh, this guy is a pro running back. We just need to get him in shape, and they failed to do so. So I don't think it's a talent. I don't think it's a talent thing. I think he's just, if you're a professional athlete and you can't keep yourself in shape, that qualifies as a bust to me.
So what you're telling me is he was actually a first round bust for 2 different teams.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. And it does look like Cleveland then traded that pick. I was trying to see who they drafted in that draft. The Indianapolis pick went to Cleveland, and then it was traded to Philadelphia.
Where did Trent Richardson did he retire as a Packer? Where did he retire?
I mean, he played with the Colts, and then he was on the Raiders and the Ravens.
There were 2
practice squads. So.
I was trying to remember who the last team was. I know it wasn't the Colts.
At least he will forever live on as a meme for urinating tree.
There you go. All right.
You know what? Here's the other save for real quick. Here's the other save for Brady Quinn. Same draft class as Joe Thomas. And like, if you're drafting Joe Thomas first and you hit that high, and then you're just like, let's just throw a rookie quarterback back there and see if it works. That's what Cleveland was doing at this time, by the way. They were like, we'll give him a shot. We'll give Colt McCoy a shot. We'll do this the next year. It was like, it was someone different every year. It was like, they were just throwing stuff at the wall. And
the opposite of what a lot of teams do, where it's, hey, let's just give him a different offensive coordinator, coordinator, different coach, different offensive coordinator. So
100%.
So far, we picked some Cleveland Browns, but let's do more. Your 4 seed. Dak thought he knew it. Pretty sure he knew it. Tim Couch, your 4 seed. Tim Couch or Justin Gilbert? Who moves on?
I have a special memory with this pick.
Okay. You want to share?
99. I'd actually just moved to Maryland, still following my Jaguars, and naturally, because, NFL and geography, we were in the AFC Central, so Browns were a divisional opponent. I remember the game in Cleveland with the infamous double spike, to where the referees tried to call the end of the game after overturning a play on review after another play had already happened. And naturally, Cleveland being Cleveland and it being in cold weather, they threw snowballs and batteries and other objects on the field. It took a call from Paul Tagliabue himself after over a half an hour to say, get back on the field and play those last 48 seconds. You ain't getting off that easy.
Does Tim Couch move on? Ooh. Couch does move on. Jesse, why did you go Gilbert?
He was not great, Couch, that is, but he had a great season. He took the Browns to the playoffs. I mean, if you can take the Browns to the playoffs, you should get a lifetime contract for the Browns at this point. And I said my piece on Gilbert, and I still feel like he was a bigger bust.
All right, we have one spot remaining, and I feel slightly bad because as we were going through this, I saw I could have just had a really fun matchup in the first round, but I thought Trent Richardson was too high, and I just don't like this guy. So he's here. Your very last person in this 24-pick draft is Johnny Manziel. What a total douche. 5 might be too high.
I like that you put him
but
high
I
just
can't
because you think
stand
he's a
him.
douche. That makes me so happy. I love it.
It's so bad. It's just. But as we were going on, I go, I could have had Johnny Manziel and Brady Quinn. That would have been more fun. First round matchup, and it would have gave Zach
Did you
7 more
watch
points.
the?
So I apologize.
Did you guys watch the documentary on him on Netflix?
I have not.
Not yet.
You should. That one and the Florida Gator ones are the two best, but the Johnny one's the best because it's told from him. So it's like they're letting him control the narrative, which is usually terrible for documentaries because you're not getting the truth. You're getting their version of the truth. But he just tells you how it is. And it's like, no, I didn't study the playbook. I just went out there and did what I wanted to do. I was partying all the time. My family was never rich. I made it up. It's crazy. The entire thing is nuts. And I think a lot of people watch it and they like him more after watching it. And it just solidified everything that I thought about him already, which is that he's just a terrible human.
But it's also to that point where I think I haven't watched the documentary, and I'll have to watch it. But it's one of those things where he's so honest about it. He's not.
Yeah.
He's like, listen, I was this bad. You're like,
yeah.
So.
But it also makes you realize that he was a total gamer, and I don't know. Probably should have been a first round pick. This whole Cleveland section is just like it's just as much Cleveland's mistakes as it is like who the person is.
Yeah, I did laugh that you brought up that some of these teams needed their own quadrant. I found this really fun to give Cleveland their own quadrant at the end.
I mean, I said for years, until Cleveland shows me that they're a competent organization, I will trust them. And I got to see the documentary now because I was looking at Johnny Manziel and I'm like, yeah, he actually needs to, do some football stuff to get better. I feel so vindicated.
But does he move on to the next round? Anybody got to write it down? Money, Trent?
Oh, jeez.
Zach
I didn't even write
talking
this
about
down.
the documentary. He pulled a Sean Garmer on us. we sit here and have conversations to hide the fact that we're writing down answers. And
sorry, I'm trying to write down. I was trying to find my Trent. I'm putting Trent. It's Trent
moves on. We've already talked enough about Johnny Manziel, so we won't waste that time. I'm not even going to put the number up because it's just going to drive me nuts. All right,
it would have been fun to have them against each other, though.
Yeah. Tim Couch, Trent Richardson. Who makes the final four? Everybody got their answers set? Man, where do we go? Jesse, let me see yours. Okay, Erik. I chose right. Zach, break the tie.
You know where I'm going.
Couch all the way. Jesse, you were the opposite pick again. How come?
Yeah, he defended him already.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Couch took him to the playoffs. Trent was a first round bust for two different teams. I feel like that's enough explanation in and of itself.
Okay.
They both pretty much had one good season, realistically.
Right.
But it also was more so Trent was lazy, and that translated to not good, and Couch got hurt.
And his best season was, you're right, Couch's best season was also the fourth year of his career, which it does show improvement, which he's the only person on this list that shows any sort of like increase in productivity. But to me, the weirdest thing about Couch is like, maybe it's time period. That's when I was like a kid watching football. But to me, as a kid, he was like, people pointed to him to explain what a bust was to me. And that's how I started deciding that other people were busts. So, go ahead.
Yeah, and the fact of that, it's one thing to be a first round bust for multiple teams. I get that, but this was their first pick when they were coming back into the league. And yeah, you get SEC quarterback, fine. Someone who did good things for their school, fine. But I'm sorry, University of Kentucky quarterback. This does not work. Usually on.
I'm pretty sure they have one every year. Multiple quarterbacks every year, actually. University of Kentucky.
Granted, rest in peace to the hefty lefty Jared Lorenzen. But
Yeah, the man.
All right, here are where things stand. We still have bonus points to give out, but Jesse looking for his second win with 36 points. Zach only 4 points behind. Erik had the lead a couple times. He now trails. Who's going to make the finals? Let's look at Tony Mandarich versus Jamarcus Russell first. And I'm not even going to leave this screen because everyone's going to show me Jamarcus Russell. Absolutely. We'll move him on over. Ryan Leaf versus Tim Couch. Not leaving the screen. I mean, it's only a 2-horse race, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Leaf and Russell. Now, who wins? Everybody have their champion. Zach was ready to show, so let's see Jamarcus Russell. Oh, Erik. Let me see yours. Yes. Jesse, break the tie. Jamarcus Russell is your champion. Just quick thoughts while I tabulate up all the scores. Erik, why'd you go Leaf?
Again, for the attitude and somewhat arrogance of Jamarcus Russell, Ryan Leaf just showed on the field he wasn't ready. In the locker room, he wasn't ready. And he got extremely brief whips with other teams, but it's just like, no, the league just wanted to practically scrub him from existence. But I do give him the kudos, as you mentioned earlier, after his own battles, his own legal issues, getting the coaching, and now as an analyst, everything that he's done, he's really turned it around, which shows even he kind of wants to forget this part of his life.
I think of the blank DVD incident for Jamarcus Russell, right, where it's like they said they gave him like the film study to do, and he said he watched it, and then they're like there was nothing on there. So to me, that's the greatest. And that story made it around the league, and that's probably why no one else gave him a chance. But like, the amount of these two are both self-sabotage, right? Like you can make the same cases. They both never made it onto a different team. Their stats are terrible, but I don't know why, but that story is going to stand with me for the rest of my life. It's like I'll never forget that he just lied about watching something that didn't exist. So,
Jesse, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, just straight up, kind of had that attitude of I made my money and now I don't have to actually do anything to earn it. Back when those mega salaries were guaranteed, and it showed on the field, and it showed in how he carried himself in press conferences and everything. So yeah, just
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't he the guy who, when it came to the rookie talent show, all he did was just literally make it rain? That might be him, but I remember somebody doing that around that time period. Again, I may be
I don't
wrong,
know.
but hearing
I never heard
that
that story, but
him, it's like my brain connects it naturally.
Man,
well,
Randy, I wish I would have told you to get the clip where he's saying you can't say biggest bust without saying biggest. I don't know if you've seen that video of him. It was from like a couple years ago. He's like, "Oh, I'm still rich. I still have all this money." They interviewed him a couple years ago, and he's like, "Not doing
Yeah.
codeine anymore." And he just goes, "If you're gonna say I'm the biggest bust of all time, you better say biggest, because no one was better than I was before he made the league or whatever." But
I was right. That was Jamarcus Russell. His rookie talent show. He's just like, "Nope, I'm done." Like
the character.
All right, here are what you guys picked for your Final Fours and your champion. The finals went as scripted. Jesse and Zach went with their guy. Erik went with his. Erik and Zach had 3 of the 4 Final Fours in their situations. Jesse just with the 2. Erik, you're the only one that had somebody on your Final Four that didn't make the list. Go ahead and talk about him for a moment.
I mean, I went ahead and I was just going back with all of my guys where I'm thinking, all right, with Busts, he had another documentary in Todd Marinovich. It was a very good documentary, the Todd Marinovich Project. Everything was leading up to, okay, you understand from childhood and all of that issues to where highly touted and everything coming from USC, staying with the Raiders, also went to the Arena League with the LA Avengers and threw 10 touchdown passes in a game. So it's just like everything was there, but you kind of understood if you looked at the backstory, this could have gone horribly wrong even then. But just like you recommend the Johnny Manziel documentary, watch the Marinovich Project. You'll understand.
There you go. All right. Before we show the final score, Zach, first time on the show. Did you have fun?
It was great. I was just bummed that I couldn't pick Anthony Bennett for the biggest bust of all time. We should do an all Cleveland sports biggest bust of all time at some point.
There's a lot of them. I asked, though, because your first episode and you get your first heartbreak. Jesse, you scored 3 points in your first ever episode, and you're almost to that total in wins in your consecutive episodes since. Jesse holds on to a narrow 2-point victory. Victory speech, sir?
Yeah, I mean, that third spot for me, I'm digging it. So keep the wheel spinning, just picking me last.
Yeah.
I am glad that no Niners made the list representing here. There's a lot of wide receivers that we could talk about that the Niners, I was thinking back earlier, like AJ Jenkins, but he was so late in the first round that it was not as big of a bust. But 1 year with the Niners, 2 years with the Chiefs. I mean,
when you root for a team that's never in the top 5 in the draft order, it's tough to get on this list.
But
So-
I mean, we even had some more recently. It's hard to call them busts necessarily. Alden Smith had some really great seasons and then just kind of busted out for different reasons. Reuben Foster, kind of the same thing. So it's tough when you get those off-field stuff. You always hope that it's just they suck, and they're a bust because they suck, and not because they got injured or did drugs or gambled.
Fell into the wrong stuff. For sure. So there you go. We had a little bit of fun at some careers, and as Jesse said, hopefully everyone bounced back like Ryan Leaf and are happy with where they are now, even if they're looked on these lists. Hopefully they can joke about it like Ryan Leaf can as well. So Jesse gets his second win all time, moving up the all-time leaderboard. All 3 of these guys are scheduled to be back within the next month or so. Erik will be back next episode as we do a little callback. One of our first episodes we ever did was on the 1990s best sitcoms. And we wanted to go nostalgia again. And we're doing the 90s best comedy movies, which if anybody drops out, I know Jesse wants in because I know he watches a ton of movies. I'll just say right now, there are some lists that are easy to make. There are some lists that are difficult to seed. This was impossible. I think I wrote down 30 movies before I looked up anything, before even starting to do seedings. So there's going to be some angry people for that episode, and I'm very, very thrilled for it.
Mad brackets, not bad brackets.
Yeah. Robert Hagan will be here. Sean Garmer will be here, along with Erik Watkins.
Yeah, and so you're basically telling me I need to prepare and have certain consumables on standby.
It is highly possible. I have Zach scheduled again in May for the best current MLB team logos. Sure. That was
Anyone
just
but
one I
Cleveland.
threw in there. Anyone but Cleveland. And Jesse will be back later on in that same month. He'll be here for the best NXT takeovers of all time. So a lot of interesting, different things coming up. We got some gaming stuff in there. We got some nerdy stuff. We got some food items, as always. We the sports stuff to talk about. All sorts of things right here on Brad Brackets. If you enjoy this type of stuff, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all the other YouTube-y stuff, which I'm still learning how to do, which, again, I should take this speech and say it at the beginning of the speech, but I haven't learned that yet. Come back every single Monday for another edition of Bad Brackets. But until then, don't forget, good brackets don't last forever, but bad brackets do.